Ah, my dear, my darling. Come closer. Sit here with me for a moment. You know, life has a curious way of hiding its greatest treasures in the simplest places, doesn't it? Often, we spend our whole lives looking at a safe, thinking it's empty, just because the key we have doesn't seem to fit. Today, I wanted to talk to you about a young man, Tiago, and his grandfather, Seu Benedito, a story that teaches us a lot about what true wealth is. Tiago, you see, loved his grandfather. He loved him with that pure love of a child nestling in his lap and finding refuge in those big, rough hands. But as Tiago grew up, he began to see the world with the eyes of the world, and the eyes of the world don't see very well in the darkness of simplicity. For Tiago, and for the entire small town, Seu Benedito was a poor man. Poor like a bird that only has its nest, you know. The house was small with whitewashed walls, that lovely smell of coffee brewed in a cloth and cornbread, but also the smell of old wood and time. The furniture was the same as it had been for as long as Tiago could remember. His grandfather's armchair had a permanent indentation, the exact shape of Seu Benedito, and the arm was patched with a scrap of leather that wasn't even the same color. His clothes. His clothes. They were clean, always clean, smelling of coconut soap, but the shirt collars were worn, the elbows frayed. Seu Benedito was a master of mending, and for him nothing was lost, everything was transformed. As Tiago grew up, while his friends got new bicycles and fashionable shoes, he looked at his grandfather and felt, it's hard to admit, he felt a pang of shame, a shame that ached in his chest because it mixed with the immense love he had for him. He saw his grandfather going to church in his only suit, already shining from so much wear, and heard people commenting, "What a man of faith, Mr. Benedito. It's a shame God didn't bless him with more things." And Tiago heard this, and doubt took root in his boyish heart. Why, my God, why did such a good man, who spent hours on his knees in his room, who always had a kind word for everyone, live with so little? Mr. Benedito's little was glaringly obvious to those who measured blessings by the size of a bank account. He didn't have a car. He didn't have a modern television. The greatest luxury for Seu Benedito was the jaboticaba tree in his backyard and the sun streaming through the kitchen window. Tiago, now a young man, sometimes tried to help. "Grandpa, why don't you sell this house and buy a smaller, newer apartment?" And Seu Benedito would just smile with his eyes, those deep eyes that seemed to hold the whole sky, and say, "My son, what more could I need? Here I have everything I need. I have the air I breathe, I have my prayers, and I have you." But Tiago didn't understand. How could he understand? The world outside shouted that to have was to be, and his grandfather, in the eyes of the world, was nobody. Tiago's pain was this: the pain of loving a man whom the world despised for his simplicity, and the pain of not understanding why the faith his grandfather so often proclaimed didn't translate into material comfort. Little did he know, my dear, little did he know, that God's true accounting doesn't use the same numbers as ours. The question that lingered day after day was, how can a man live a whole life of faith and die like that? Poor. The years, my dear, the years are like a river. They pass by, carrying away a bit of our childhood certainties. Tiago became a man. He went to the big city to study and work. He wanted to succeed. He wanted perhaps to prove to himself and to the world that he wouldn't be like his grandfather. He wanted the much that Seu Benedito seemed to despise. He got a good job, bought a new car, an apartment with a view. He had things, many things, and with each achievement he felt pride and emptiness, a strange emptiness he couldn't explain. Visits to his grandfather became less frequent. The journey was long, the work was immense, and if he were honest, each visit was a small suffering. It was like looking in the mirror of the past. He would arrive with his gleaming car, his designer clothes, and find Seu Benedito on the porch, in the same leather sandals, mending a hammock. "Bless me, Grandpa." "God bless you, my son. Sit here, the coffee's almost ready." And there in that silence, Tiago felt the abyss. He spoke of his successes, his achievements, his travels, and Seu Benedito listened with the patience of a monk, and at the end he asked, "But tell me, Tiago, have you been praying? Is your heart at peace?" These questions irritated Tiago. They irritated him because he didn't have the answer. Peace? He had bills, he had goals, he had status. Peace seemed like a luxury he couldn't buy. The long journey through the desert wasn't Seu Benedito's, my son. The desert was Tiago's, a desert of incomprehension. He looked at his grandfather and saw a man stuck in time, a man who had been content with the crumbs of life. And old Benedito, with his wise eyes, looked at his grandson and saw a lost boy chasing after the wind, with his hands full of nothing. Tiago's faith was being tested, not by lack like his grandfather's, but by excess, the excess of noise, the excess of ambition. He began to doubt. If his grandfather's faith was so great, why didn't it save him from poverty? If his faith, Tiago's, existed, why didn't it fill the void left by things? It was a painful paradox. The figure of his grandfather, so beloved, also became a symbol of what he feared: irrelevance. The world doesn't celebrate men like Seu Benedito. The world ignores them, calls them simpletons, and Tiago, even loving his grandfather, was part of that world. With each visit, the house seemed smaller, the patches more visible, the poverty more raw, and Seu Benedito's faith more stubborn. He continued waking before sunrise for his prayers, continued helping the widowed neighbor with the garden, continued reading his worn Bible until the pages came loose. He was like an old tree planted by the stream, unshaken by drought or wind. And Tiago was a dry leaf carried away by any breeze of modernity. The wait, the long wait, wasn't for a financial miracle. It was Tiago's wait for understanding. But sometimes, my dear, understanding only arrives when the sun sets, and the sun of Seu Benedito's life was setting. That desert seemed endless, and the question echoing in Tiago's soul was my grandfather's entire life in vain? And then, the day we all feared, but knew was inevitable, arrived. Seu Benedito passed away. It was a serene departure, like his own. He slept in his patched armchair and awoke in glory, as he himself used to say. The wake was simple, like his life, but the church was full, not of important people from the city, but of simple people with teary eyes. The widow he helped, the young man he advised, the young woman he taught to read. People Tiago didn't even know existed. That was the first surprise. But the real turning point was yet to come. After the farewell, Tiago was left with the most difficult task: emptying the house, the small house that held a world. And it was there, in the deafening silence of absence, that the first sign appeared. It wasn't thunder nor a flash of light. It was something small, insignificant to anyone except to God. James was in his grandfather's room, a room that smelled of rosemary and holiness, it seemed. There was the narrow bed, the dark wood wardrobe, and a small desk. On it, the Bible. The old, worn, and beloved Bible of his grandfather, Benedict. James picked it up. The pages were marked, annotated with trembling handwriting, full of Deo gratias, thanks be to God, in the margins. He leafed through it, feeling the weight of that faith he never understood. And then something fell out of it. It fell onto the wooden floor, making a dry, metallic sound, a plim that echoed in the silence. James bent down. It was a key, but not an ordinary key. It was small, made of dark metal, somewhat rusty, but with a beautiful design on the tip, almost like a fleur-de-lis. He frowned. A key. He knew every door in that house. None of them had a lock like that. It wasn't the key to the front door, or the back door, or the cupboard. It was an orphan key. He picked it up. It was cold. He turned it over and over in his hands. Why would Seu Benedito keep a useless key? Inside the Bible? The most sacred place in the house? Did it make any sense? He tried the desk drawers. Nothing. He tried the dresser. Nothing. It was a mystery, a small thing, a piece of rusty metal that suddenly seemed to have enormous weight. Tiago, the practical man, the man of spreadsheets and results, wanted to throw it away. It was trash. It was just another old piece of junk from his grandfather, but he couldn't. There was something about that key, the way it was kept, as if it were a secret between Genesis and Revelation. He put it in his pocket, the cold metal against his skin. He didn't know it, but that was the first thread of a ball of yarn that God was beginning to unravel. The first sign, the first piece of a puzzle that would change everything. What, after all, unlocked that key? Tiago spent the following days immersed in dust and memories. Each object he packed told a story of thrift, of mending, of frugal life. The feeling that his grandfather was poor only solidified. The key was still in his pocket, an uncomfortable weight. Sometimes he would take it out, look at it, and shake his head. It was probably from some old piece of furniture that Grandpa had thrown away. But why keep it in the Bible? It wouldn't leave his head. On the third day of tidying up, he went to the backyard. Mr. Benedito's backyard. There was the jaboticaba tree laden with fruit, and further back, near the wall, was the shed. Ah, the shed. Tiago didn't even remember it. It was an old building made of dark wood, with a zinc roof already stained with rust. Grandpa used it to store gardening tools, firewood, old things. As a child, Tiago had a certain fear of that place. It was dark and full of cobwebs. He walked over there, more out of obligation than curiosity. He needed to see what was inside before locking the house. The door was locked, with a padlock, a large old padlock covered in a thick layer of rust and dust. It looked like it hadn't been opened in decades. Tiago looked at the padlock. It was a strangely small lock for such a robust padlock. He stopped. His heart suddenly began to beat faster. He reached into his pocket. The cold metal of the key, the first sign, touched his fingers. He took it out. He looked at the key. He looked at the padlock, the second event. No, it couldn't be. The key was small, almost delicate. The padlock was rough, old. They didn't seem compatible. It was a silly idea, a coincidence, but what if? What was Seu Benedito, the man who had no secrets, the man who lived with his door open, keeping under lock and key in a dilapidated shed? James approached. The dust, the smell of mold. He blew on the lock. A cloud of dust made him cough. He hesitated. For a moment, he felt he was invading a space he shouldn't. But he needed to know. With a trembling hand, he took the key, the mysterious sign, to the padlock hole, the unexpected connection. He pushed, and to his complete surprise, the key slid in. Lisa, as if it had been made for it. It went in whole. James held his breath. He turned the key, and he heard the loudest sound he had ever heard in that yard. A metallic, dry click that seemed to have come from another century. The padlock opened. What the hell was Seu Benedito hiding there? What was in that shed that required a key kept inside the Bible? The fortune. The word from the video's title echoed in Tiago's mind. Could it be? Could his poor grandfather not be so poor after all? The suspense was almost unbearable. This, my dear, my darling, this is the moment the veil is torn. Tiago pulled the now open padlock. The metal was heavy. He pulled the door latch. The wood creaked, a long sound, like the moan of something that had been sleeping for a long time. He pushed the door open. Darkness, a strong smell of old paper, dust, and something else, a smell of cedar, perhaps. The afternoon sunlight filtered through a crack, cutting through the darkness and illuminating billions of dust particles dancing in the air. Tiago turned on his cell phone flashlight. The beam of light ran along the walls, and Tiago's jaw dropped. There was no gold, no silver bars, no jewels. The fortune the world would expect wasn't there, but the shed. The shed was full, not tools, not trash. It was lined from floor to ceiling with handmade wooden shelves. And on those shelves, my son, there were hundreds of notebooks, black-covered notebooks, hard-covered notebooks, all perfectly aligned, labeled by year. 1970, 1971, 1972, up to the current year. Tiago approached, trembling. He picked up the first notebook from the last shelf, his grandfather's handwriting, impeccable. He opened it, and it was there that the hidden fortune was revealed. It wasn't money, it was much more. The notebooks weren't personal diaries, they were ledgers. Ledgers of a lifetime of secret generosity. Tiago began to read, and the tears began to flow. His grandfather, Benedito, received a small pension. But what Tiago didn't know was that his grandfather had received, many years before, a modest inheritance from a distant uncle, an inheritance that no one in the city ever knew about. And what did he do with it? He didn't buy a new house, he didn't buy a car, he invested. But not in the bank. He invested in the kingdom. The notebooks detailed penny by penny each donation. December 1985, 50 cruzeros for Dona Zilda's medicine, pneumonia. Deo gratias. March 1992, a $200 for the postman's son's college books. He will be a good doctor. Deo gratias. June 2001, monthly food basket for the family of... The name was crossed out. God knows who. There were pages and pages, decades. He paid for surgeries. He paid off loan sharks' debts. He sponsored small missionaries in places Tiago didn't even know existed. He anonymously built 2 rooms in the house of a widow with 5 children. The man who wore patched shoes was putting shoes on the feet of dozens of children to go to school. The man who ate the bare minimum was filling the tables of entire families. The shed was not a junk storage facility. It was the central office of a charity empire. The key didn't hold money. It held the legacy fortune. Was not what he had, but what he had gave. Tiago fell to his knees on the dusty floor of that shed, clutching his notebooks. He thought his grandfather was poor, and there, in that moment, he realized that Seu Benedito was the most ridiculously, scandalously rich man he would ever know. The hidden fortune was proof of a life that echoed Christ's command. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Seu Benedito didn't have a safe on earth because his shed was a direct portal to the safe in heaven. Ah, my children, how many times do we judge the treasure by the safe? How many times do we look at the peel and despise the fruit? Tiago spent the whole night in that shed. He read until dawn, and with each page he felt his own world, his achievements, his new car, his apartment with a view. Everything seemed to shrink. Everything seemed dust. He spent his whole life ashamed of his grandfather's poverty, while his grandfather lived a life of celestial royalty. That simple man, who mended his own clothes, was, in secret, clothing the souls of hundreds of people with dignity. That key kept in the Bible made perfect sense. It was between, "Let not your left hand know what your right hand is doing," and, "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Seu Benedito's heart wasn't in those notebooks. It was in every life he touched. The notebooks were merely a record. The lesson that remained for Tiago and that I want to leave with you today is profound. We live in a world that screams for more. More money, more status, more things. And God in silence asks us, more. For what? True wealth, the fortune that thieves cannot steal, that moths cannot destroy, is what we give. It is the love we spread. It is the faith we live in secret. Seu Benedito wasn't poor, he was free, free from the need to impress, free from the tyranny of having. He was rich in the only wealth that matters, the wealth of spirit, the wealth of purpose, the wealth of being an instrument in God's hands. And you, my dear friend, how have you measured your wealth? By the numbers in your bank account, or by the lives you have touched? Perhaps you are feeling like Tiago, looking at someone, or perhaps at yourself, and seeing only patched clothes, a simple life, difficulties. And perhaps God is, at this very moment, handing you a key for you to open a warehouse and discover the true fortune hidden there, the fortune of patience, resilience, and unseen faith. I want to invite you to share something. I know this story touched you deeply. Perhaps it reminded you of a Mr. Benedict in your own life, someone the world called simple, but whom you knew was a giant of faith, a hidden treasure. Could you do something? Share this story here in the comments. Let's fill this space with tributes to these giants. Tell us, who was the Mr. Benedict in your life? What was the greatest hidden fortune you discovered in the simplicity of faith? Let's create a community of gratitude, and if this story warmed your heart, leave a like so that this message reaches more Jameses who need to see beyond appearances. And of course, subscribe to the channel so we can continue sharing these stories of faith. May God bless your week, and may He give you eyes to see the hidden fortune in every simplicity of life. Peace be with you.